The views expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated.
I'd like to welcome everyone back to the Nova Society. I'm your host, Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, and I'm here with my panel, your favorite and mine, Dr. Scott Gershwer and Dr. Mark Bound. Today we will be answering listener emails, and we have a question from Crystal, who lives in Rochester, Minnesota. Crystal asks, I serve as a medical services coordinator at a nonprofit clinic where I work directly with people experiencing homelessness. From this work, I've seen firsthand that while housing is not a cure-all for every challenge people face, it provides the essential foundation for stability, health, employment, and recovery. In Rochester, local stakeholders are working diligently, but we continue to face roadblocks that prevent real progress. At the same time, President Trump's rollbacks at the federal level risk undermining the strides communities have already made. My question is this: what should cities, especially wealthier ones with the resources to make meaningful change, be doing to move beyond stalled efforts and truly address the homelessness crisis in ways that are sustainable and equitable for the people who live in our communities? Thank you, Crystal. That is an excellent question. Mark?
What a stupid question.
Scott?
Is this the one, Mark?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
No, this is an excellent question.
So the only reason that Scott said that was because I told him Crystal was probably one of my more brilliant students that I had this past term, and so he's only picking on you, Crystal. Don't. This actually is a very good question. Don't listen to him. And whatever, if you're still taking classes, make sure that if you see Dr. Gershwer as the professor, make a change. I mean,
no, everybody's
bring your sense of humor.
Yeah, you got to bring your sense of humor with the Dr. Gershwer's class. What do you think?
And I have no sense of humor, so you're safe with me, Crystal. I have no sense of humor. This is a very serious question. Soon this woman would probably wind up in prison or in jail, and how really dangerous this whole criminalization of the homeless has become, as well as you were saying, when the Housing First initiatives are taken away, for me it's extremely hard to see how someone who's struggling with mental illness, you need to have stability, and that typically would begin with a secure place to live, so that you have a secure location. So go ahead, Scott. Mark.
This is one of those topics that is, in a way, near and dear to my heart. About 5 years ago, I was on the board of the largest homelessness shelter organization in South Carolina. They about almost went broke. I left the board and actually took over as the CEO for 2 years and got them back on their feet, and then said, you know what? I'm an academic. I don't want to, and turn it back over. I've sat on the South Carolina Attorney General's task force for homelessness and for human trafficking as well. And I can say that I was very surprised. This is not my field. Homelessness was never my field. And when I first got involved into this, I was surprised to find out how many, first of all, veterans are homeless. And I was also very surprised to find out how many veterans wanted to be homeless. They had jobs, but they wanted to live off the grid. And this was an important thing for them. So for those people, which I don't think is the majority by any stretch of imagination, I think you've got to let them live the lives that they want to live. And I think you have to understand why homelessness exists. So many people that deal with the homelessness crisis take on the attitude of it's just good people that something bad happened to. That can be true, but I can also say, in my experience here in South Carolina, and South Carolina has the 12th largest homeless population in the country. Spartanburg, where I live, it ranks number 2 in South Carolina, and we're not a very big county. We are not Greenville. We are not Charleston. We are not Columbia. But that's how many homeless people that we have here. And the fact is that, yes, it may be true that, homelessness is caused by bad things happening to good people. Yes. But that's also a minority. we would see, we had, in my area here, we had 5 or 6 shelters, and there was a time limit that you could be in the shelter, and they would rotate through all of the shelters because they knew the system, and they used the system. I remember pulling up one time for a board meeting, and this young lady pulled up in a Cadillac Escalade. She had 6 children. All of them had, Air Jordan sneakers on. And I says, "Good, can I help you?" And she says, "Oh yeah, I'm here to for my interview to come into the shelter." I'm sorry, you have a Cadillac Escalade that's probably worth about $60,000, and your kids are all wearing $100 sets of sneakers. Why this is a matter of priorities, plain and simple. You could sell that Cadillac and could get yourself a very nice place and have a great place to live for probably the next 10 years. But again, it's a matter of priorities. It is a problem that I think we have to go in with our eyes wide open. We have to understand that homelessness is not hegemonic. People are in the state of homelessness for different reasons. And we have to address the reasons that they are in that state. If you want sustainability, you cannot treat this as a one-size-fits-all problem. Like I say, those veterans that do not want to live on the grid, they shouldn't have to. But that does not mean that we cannot make their lives better in some way. And many of the veterans organizations in many towns and cities really do that. They don't try to force them into an apartment. They don't try to force them into the grid, but they do what they can to make sure that they have the facilities to be able to live the way they want, and they deserve to. I'm fine. But we have to really address, we can't take this just from the everybody's the same empathetic attitude. We have to meet them where they're at and why are you here? Is it because you won't work? Is it because you bought a $60,000 Cadillac, which was only 6 months old when I saw it, as opposed to making sure your kids had a place to live? Is this what we're looking at? That is what makes this thing so complex. And I don't think we put enough money or resources into actually trying to diagnose why. We try to come up with a solution, but it's always the same solution. Shelter, affordable housing. I'm sorry, if you don't have a job and you won't keep a job, affordable housing isn't going to do you any good. That's just kind of the way it works. And that is one of the approaches. I look at this, and I understand Crystal's concerned about this. I'm as concerned as anybody else about it. But I think sometimes we approach this from the wrong direction. We are making this like, I don't know, we're a hammer and everything's a nail. And I think we've got to stop taking that kind of attitude when it comes to homelessness.
Well, for me, I was just thinking about what you said, like with the vets. I mean, if they wanted to live in their vehicles or live in the woods, I mean, whatever makes them secure is fine. I mean, so to me, that, I guess I shouldn't say that having a home is, or a place to live is what makes a person secure. I guess whatever makes a person feel secure and stable is what should happen, rather than a place. So, and that's one issue so thank you, Mark, for pointing that out. I appreciate that correction. And that makes, what you said makes the present Trump approach even worse. You're not allowed to sleep in your car. You're not allowed to be in your car. You're not allowed to be in a tent or under a tarp or on the street. You're either going to be put into jail or in a mental institution, apparently. And so if a person has a job but can't afford a place to live, or chooses not to have a place to live because of needing to feel the freedom to move around as necessary, such as a vet might, and be away from people, or be not pinned down in one place, that solution of being put in a mental institution or being put in jail is grossly inapplicable and wrong and unethical, as well as being immoral. So that the solutions are terrible. So I think community need to be able to resist the federal edict. And I
Well, no,
I don't know
communities
how
need to
they
get. No, I'm
I
going to
don't know how
disagree
they
with that
do
totally.
that.
I would totally disagree with that. Communities need to deal with this problem as it deals with the community itself. The problem in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and the problem in New York City are two. The problem itself may be the same, but the factors that create the problem are totally different. Each community has to approach this from their own standpoint,
Well, that's what I
from the
mean.
unique.
But if the
And
federal
again,
government says you have to put them in jail or you have to put them in a mental institution, and that's not going to work for your community, you have to resist and reject the federal
well, okay,
edict. That's the first. That was my only point
right.
there. And you have to look at your own community, which is what you're saying. So go ahead.
Again, the fact is that you've got to treat. It's sort of like alcoholism. And many, many years ago, I worked for the New York State Department of Alcohol and Substance Abuses. This was like 1,000 years ago. And almost every single provider, every single CAC, certified alcoholism counselor, was probably in recovery. And they all believed in AA. That was the answer to everything. That was the answer to everything. AA had a 5% success rate. 5%, that's it. But they kept running the same old play over and over again, the Einstein's definition of insanity, hoping for a different result because they would not get out of their own way and consider different options to deal with the problem. Did not say there are different reasons for this, that this happens. We have to approach people as an individual. We have to approach people as the circumstances are unique to them. And one size does not fit all. And homelessness is in the same boat in my mind. We are still stuck. So to Crystal, those cities that still are stuck in the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s attitude of how to take care of homelessness, how to address the problem, your best bet is to get out of that mindset. Leave that mindset. Come into the 21st century and treat it exactly like it is. I remember the alcoholism counselors were so happy when the DSM-4, actually it was the DSM-3 back then, came out and said that alcoholism was a disease. They were thrilled. They were thrilled about that. And I remember sitting in a meeting at a conference and it went, yes, it's a disease now. I said, all right, then when are you going to start treating it like a disease? Because if you told the American public, the people of the state of New York who pay an awful lot of money in taxes to deal with this situation, if you tell them you only have a 5% chance of being successful, we are better at taking care of cancer than we are taking care of this. Because you guys will not get your head out of your ass and look to new, different ways to approach this. These are individuals. Treat them as individuals. These are people that need help. There is no doubt about it. And the homelessness situation is exactly the same way. Treat them as the people that they are with the unique situations that they have. Scott, I know I rambled on. Sorry about that, bud.
No, good, man. All good. Because look, I have zero expertise in this, right? This is not my thing. The only thing that I know about it is that we took in a homeless girl here for a while, a couple of years ago. She was my daughter's best friend. She was in high school. Her family had lost their house, which they rented. Apparently, her father never paid the rent for a really long time. Would go through these like episodes from time to time, whether he was an alcoholic or a drug addict or just mentally ill or something like that. Would go through these things and like abandon his family. And so it was, there was a mother, her daughter, her two sons, and a dog, 5 of them. And we wanted the daughter to continue going to school. The boys were older and they were working. They had jobs, kind of day laborers, I guess. So not steady work, but they had the ability to get work. And the mother was a very talented baker and also was able to get work from time to time on a freelance basis. But they were all homeless. The father had flown the coop. We wanted this girl to be able to finish it, get her high school, get her degree, her diploma, then move on to the next thing. At the same time, they were from Italy, and they'd moved back and forth between the United States and Italy a few times. So we housed the girl. Couldn't house everybody. My daughter had gone off to college, so we had an extra room, so we gave it to her. It wasn't pleasant, but every now and then we would have to, drive her to see her family. She might spend the night if they got into a hotel, which they did from time to time, usually not real nice places, as you can imagine, right off I-95 in Connecticut, and spend the night. We also tried very hard to help, and we're not without resources. We know people here locally. A very good friend of mine is on the board of a number of different charities, and he tried to help us. And one of the things that we discovered was that all these people that are willing to help other people set up charities, and they do these fundraisers and stuff like that, are awfully ineffective also. And it's just not, it's not the answer, right? The answer is not charity. The answer is government action. And in the end, we were able to do a GoFundMe, get them enough money to get on a plane and go back to Italy, and they've been there ever since. They seem happy. We're still in touch with them. It seems pretty good. For all of them, it had a happy ending. But, for one winter in Connecticut, they slept in their car a lot. The mother, the two sons, and the dog. They couldn't get into a shelter. They couldn't get into a hotel. Part of it was the dog, for example. Some hotels won't take a dog, and they didn't want to leave the dog outside in the car by herself all night. So one of them would stay out in the car, and the others would get some sleep, and they would switch off. And it's just like a way of life that's just insane. So that's really my only personal exposure to it. I did look into this a little bit because it's something that we discussed in one of my classes last semester, and the group did a really nice job of sort of dissecting the problem. And what I had tasked them with was to find a 3-pronged solution for things. So we'll look for problems, and we'll find a 3-pronged solution, and what the prongs have to stand on their own and help each other. The 3-pronged solutions in this case is, number one, we need more homes. Like, we are 7 million homes short of what we need in America. 7 million. 2, we have to incent home builders to build more homes. And here we run into a demand supply problem, because the greater the demand, the more money they get, the more profit they make. This is America. We like profit. We understand that somebody might not want to overbuild, create, too much supply for the demand. They did that in China, actually. And that was another part of it. So we had to find ways to incent more building, right? The second part of it, I think, is understanding that, like, what are the triggers for homelessness? Very often it's like losing a job, being sick. The connection between healthcare and homelessness is pretty shocking. There is, unfortunately, systemic racism and marginalization of people. There's a terrific article about the language that Trump used when he sort of introduced this idea in Washington, D.C. And, you sort of group people together as criminals or undesirables, and that, generally speaking, justifies some kind of discrimination, marginalization, or hate. And we've seen that, and homeless people certainly have fallen into that category, along with immigrants and so on. So, just moving people off the street itself is not really a solution, because, it's not really sustainable. And in DC, they took a one-night census on, I think it was Friday night, last Thursday, into Friday. And what they found was, in the District of Columbia, 764 people were living on the street. 81 of them were living in 54 tents, and 683 people lived in other sort of unsheltered location, tent cities, that kind of thing, boxes over their heads or whatever. 81 individuals living in 54 states. In July, there were 128 people living in 107 tents. So the problem actually had kind of gone down a little bit. But you have to understand the root causes of homelessness. And like Mark said, I think a really good point. It's not one size fits all by any means. The same sort of ideas that drive education in America and probably drive it into the gutter or the ground, is that the people closest to the students are the ones who need to have the most to say, not the federal government, right? That definitely applies here, because there are various different reasons for people to be homeless in a given area. For example, I used to work up in New Milford, Connecticut. Big shout out. New Milford, Connecticut was for a while I was working up there, like the homeless capital of Connecticut. It's a really nice middle class community that just happened to establish a bread and loaves charity in the town center, right? I don't know what the groups were that got together and put together this sort of shelter area where people could come and eat and, even if stay overnight if they needed to. And that attracted people who legitimately had, some of them had jobs but not a place to live. Others, were suffering some kind of setback and needed temporary help. And the idea was very temporary help, but it ended up being a very big deal in the town, and they had to sort of mobilize around a little bit more to sort of understand what the problems were, understand how to fix them. But basically, it really does come down to building more homes. I mean, is the first best thing that we can do about it. And all the other stuff that applies to individuals, whether they want to be off the grid or whether they want to, they need mental health facilities or what have you. But, they just ran up some bills that they'll never be able to pay. Certainly see that we can't paint them with one brush. We have to understand them as individuals. We have to understand that, you can't just sweep them off the street like they wanted to do in Washington, D.C. with this federal action and be satisfied that you've done what needs to be done, and understanding that you need part of it is a workforce that you're employing that consists of homeless people, different funding mechanisms, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's a whole slew of things that you can do to create the three-pronged approach that you would have to.
Yeah.
And I think that's the kind of thing that needs to be done. I don't know a lot of rich cities. Mark, have you ever heard of a rich city? I've never. I mean, most municipalities, most governments, local governments run on a shoestring because the desire to keep taxes low, drives out a lot of the initiatives that they wish they had. And so this idea that there are wealthy, there are places where there's great wealth that's untapped because of taxation policies, but I don't think I've ever heard of a rich city. I grew up in New York.
Well, yeah, I grew up by Binghamton, but anyway, I mean, I will say this: South Carolina cities are really. South Carolina's got money. I mean, their taxes are low, but they're very good at taking subsidies from the federal government. So they do have money to spend, and they're moving from agrarian to more industrial, and they really have benefited from that move. So, Crystal, when you talk about wealthy cities, I don't really think it matters if it's a wealthy city or if it's a poor city or whatever. Scott mentioned that some of these not-for-profits, and we found this here in South Carolina. Most of the not-for-profits were run by churches, and there was a caveat, and the caveat was, we'll give you money to help, but we get to evangelize. So there was a requirement to that. Unfortunately, much of the money that comes for homelessness here in South Carolina comes out of HUD, a federal program. Therefore, you can't evangelize because that makes you unqualified for the HUD money, that federal church and state kind of thing. So there was the problem there. Again, Most of these not-for-profits usually have an agenda of their own. They want something for what they're doing. So my suggestion would be is, yeah, the number of houses, yes, there's no doubt. We definitely have to have more affordable housing. But even with affordable housing, we still have to address the root cause of why somebody is homelessness. And mental health is a huge issue when we're talking about the homeless population. There is a huge correlation there between mental health and homelessness. And that, again, another thing that has to be addressed. So my comment would be is get those organizations, get those citizens together that aren't looking for the quid quo pro. They're not looking for it. They're doing this because it's the right thing to do. And when you talk about equitable to the citizens, correct the situation, that is the equity in itself. That comes back and pays the city back. That's a huge draw for that city. We have some great little areas here in just little Spartanburg, South Carolina, which basically some people don't go to visit simply because it's full of homeless people. So if you address the problem, those common areas, those community areas now begin to open up. And it's not that the homeless people are bothering anybody. It's just that people don't feel comfortable taking their children down around homeless people. I mean, that's just kind of the way it works. So you got to address the problem. That would be put your money to something that is sustainable. Do not make this a one-size-fits-all. Treat it just like you would a medical issue. They're not just, it's not a matter of just curing sickness with penicillin. That doesn't fix everything. Well, guess what? Housing, none of this stuff, none of the ideas from the past can fix housing all by itself. It has got to be, and I like Scott's approach, the three-prong approach. In some cities, that may be a 10-prong approach. You live up in Rochester, Minnesota. If memory serves me correctly, I think the Mayo Clinic is up there in Rochester. Your problems and the reason that you have homelessness in Rochester are a lot different than the reasons we have here in South Carolina. They're different dynamic going on there. Now, there's some, granted, that are, there's some that are going to be the same. But to address the problem, it has to be community. And the only thing the federal government should be able to do is dump some money into it. Take some money out of the defense budget. Take some money out of that. I mean, it's not like there's not enough money in there to draw from. Take some money out of the gravy seals, which I like to call the ice guys. Take them out of the gravy seals and give that to the cities and say, hey, listen, we could. It's sort of like when Pritzker of Illinois was saying, we don't want your troops in Chicago. We want the money that we had programs that we were funding that were working. That's what you've got to do. We don't want, because you're the federal government, you don't know what the hell you're doing. Oh, you don't even know what the hell to do with the things you should know how to do. We're in the community. We know why this exists, and we want to address it. All we need is money. And we pay enough into it. I think Minnesota is another one of those states that probably pays more money to the federal government than gets back from it. So, that would be, Crystal, that would be my suggestion for that. And yeah, you want sustainability, you got to address the process in your community as it exists in your community. And it's, again, one size does not fit all. And I really do. And again, Crystal, don't remember, if you see Dr. Gershwer on your schedule, have a sense of humor because you're going to need it. But hopefully we answered that. And I have to tell you, she was absolutely a brilliant student. Top 5 in her cohort last term. So I'm going to give her a big shout out.
All right. Well, thanks for the question. Sorry for the quip.
I know that. She's from Minnesota. She's got to be of hearty stock. So I'm thinking, yeah.
So thank you, Crystal, for your question. We appreciate your listening, and thank you to all our listeners. We appreciate your time and support. If you are not yet subscribed on the platform of your choice, please do so. Subscribing is free. and we will see you again next time on the Nova Society.
The Nova Society is a production of Nova Society Media, a division of the Phoenix Research Institute. We'd like to thank our production partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing partners, Apple iTunes, the largest source of podcasts and music on the internet, Spotify, the most popular platform for the Nova Society, and iHeartRadio, your source for all things music and podcasting. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms listed in our description. We'd also like to thank all of our listeners. Without your support, the Nova Society would not be possible. If you have a question or comment, we can be reached at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. So for Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Scott Gershwer, and all of our production partners here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Remember, the true power in society is knowledge. Thanks for listening, and we will see you again next time. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, the Phoenix Research Group, an independent research consortium offering social-political issue solutions to NGOs and international government agencies through multidisciplinary, nonpartisan, and unbiased research. The Phoenix Research Group is a division of the Phoenix Research Institute, the producer of the Nova Society podcast.